if you were able to just wave the magic wand and make one big change to education,
It's getting ready.
what would that be?
I would wave the wand to make all of the bad schools good schools. So that and do it in a real way, not move the cut scores.
Just change their letter grade.
Just change the letter grade. They would actually be real A's as we know them. No grade inflation here. I mean, I want kids to do their best. I want 100% proficiency in reading and writing and math. That's what I would wave my magic wand.
Welcome to the Elevated Hope Project, a podcast celebrating stories of resilience, transformation, and second chances. This podcast is proudly sponsored by Elevated Education, serving students through innovative alternative schools like East Point High School, Accelerated Learning Center, and Elevated Academy. Today, we highlight the journey of Representative Matt Gress, a former teacher turned state leader whose path from a single wide trailer in rural Oklahoma to the Arizona legislator is nothing short of remarkable. His story reflects strength, hope, and the impact of perseverance and community support. Let's dive in. Okay, Representative Matt Gress, thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you in our podcast studio. You have a significant part in policymaking in the education world specifically. So, honored to have you. We're excited to hear your story, and I'm sure our audience will be blessed by that as well.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to give my shot at Representative Matt Gress's bio. And if there's any gaps or something I get wrong, we'll fix that through the story.
And you'll hear nothing negative about me in that bio.
No,
too.
No, I don't
all
think
positive.
So.
There isn't anything
There's
negative.
nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. So you serve in the Arizona House of Representatives for Legislative District 4, which happens to be the district that Chris and I live in.
The Fighting Fourth.
Yeah, that's it. It's a great place to live. You are in your first term. No.
Second term.
Second term.
Yep.
And the next election cycle, you'll be going for re-election.
Correct. Hopefully running for my third term, and I'm on my second half of the allowed terms in the House. So you can serve 4 terms.
Got it.
So it's almost amazing. I'm on the back half of my time.
I know that goes fast because I remember it feels like yesterday you were in the governor's office. So yeah, but I'll get into that. You were raised by a single mother in rural Oklahoma, ended up being a Truman Scholar, and later earned your Master's of Public Administration from Syracuse University's Maxwell School. Earlier in your career, you worked for Teach of America, shaped by a commitment to educational opportunity and hands-on service. I think that's probably at the root of your passion for education, is being in that world. You taught English, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Your political career, I started with a governing board member of the Madison Elementary School District here in Phoenix. And from there, you were the director of the governor's Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting. Then you were elected, and you were the chair of the House Education Committee, vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, and the chair of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. That's a lot.
Yes, if you want something done, you ask a busy person, right?
I guess that's very true. Yeah.
Or I'm being punished by the speaker. One of the two. One of the two. I don't know.
Well, I think they work hard to put trustworthy folks in those chair positions to really drive policy that will work for Arizonans.
You're absolutely right. And these are not easy committee assignments to fill, but I feel like my time in the governor's office, as the budget director, you're involved in every single thing. So maybe it's the fidget in me that I can just dive in, whether we're investigating waste, fraud, and abuse in school districts, or whether we're advancing, some pretty robust school safety legislation, or the budget itself. I like being busy and being involved, and so I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, good. And thank you for your service to our great state here in Arizona. our first introduction to you was when you were in Governor Ducey's office. And, kind of before we dive into your life story and your incredible journey, I just want to take a moment to thank you for your support through these years with the work that we do. When we were coming out of COVID was the time that you were in the governor's office. And, you and Governor Ducey seeing the need to figure out a way to get these students re-engaged from being quote unquote online school that had completely disengaged from that. They weren't working, nothing. That state's direct investment into an initiative that we were running to re-engage those students, I think, sent a clear message on the importance of our future here in Arizona with these young adults, these teens that just were completely disconnected from all educational opportunity. And it gave us a chance to find thousands of students across the state of Arizona, of which we got 75% of them back into school and graduated. So that was a tremendous initiative, and we're thankful for the opportunity to serve in that way.
Absolutely. And, there were a lot of mistakes made during the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Ducey tried as much as he could within his power to keep as much of our economy and government open. He deemed a lot of things essential, much to the opposition of others who wanted to shut us all down. And I'll tell you one mistake that we did not make was bringing on organizations like Elevate to help us turn the tide, because we had a lot of school districts working against us and our efforts. We wanted to keep schools open because we knew the place for learning was going to be inside the classroom, the best place for kids, especially kids living in poverty, is the classroom. And, when the history books are written, I think they're going to show that, school leaders put present before the future, and now we're paying the consequences for that.
Yeah.
We really, really did a disservice to our kids. And I hope that that's a lesson we've all learned at this point, is that kids have to come before adults. And certainly when we're engaging with the kids, it's just a different mindset. It's a different approach. And it can't just be, the heavy hand of government. There has to be something more personal, more individual. And I think, the programming that you brought forward was transformational in that way.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, we're, and I say this often, we've got years ahead of us of continuing to unwind what happened during that time period. I mean, we're seeing it in proficiency and literacy and students coming into schools that are years behind. That has a long-term impact to our the students' future prospects and the future of the Arizona economy, and how they're going to be able to show up and contribute to their communities
and to to democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, when you don't have individuals who are literate or numerate, they can't even start thinking about their civic responsibilities. I mean, the basics haven't been addressed yet. And that's why I think we are in a crisis as a country, in part because of how much we have failed students in this K-12 system. And here in Arizona, I mean, I've not found one person yet who says, I love Arizona's K-12 system. We're on the right path. They might like their own school, and there are good programs out there that are doing amazing work. But on the whole, we need a new direction. And the stakes are very high. Not only, addressing people who've been harmed by the COVID era shutdowns, and catching them up to the extent that we can. But we're talking about the long-term future and prospects for this state being economically competitive and being vibrant from a civic standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. All right. We're getting ready to dive into your life story and your journey through life. One thing I try to remember to ask our guests before we start is, what's one thing that you're grateful for right now?
Grateful for my husband, Daniel, and we're going to be having Thanksgiving this week, hosting 20 people
Nice.
at our house. And I'm also thankful that he's cooking the turkey. So
That's what I was about to ask.
Cooking a turkey is a serious chore.
Especially for 20 people, because there's going to be a lot of opinions about how you cook that turkey.
that's true. So and we're tag teaming with someone else who's going to make a smaller turkey because we could only find a 16-pound turkey.
Yeah.
And what is 2 pounds per person, whatever that might be, the formula. So there's going to be 2 turkeys, and then that's going to create other tension of like,
Yeah.
whose turkey is getting eaten more than the other turkey.
Hopefully they both get defrosted and you
Yes.
get it. Yeah. And that's the first step.
That's the
It
first-
usually falls apart there.
Is
For us.
one of them getting deep fried?
One of them's no. Well, I've seen the videos,
Yeah.
just the massive fireball.
Yeah.
That probably would happen to us. So better not do that. Now one's getting smoked and then the other one's getting baked in the oven, I
in the
guess.
oven,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that how they call that?
Yeah.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah.
21 people.
That's right.
That's right. 21 people. No, I'm grateful. And I think it just goes to the larger point is that I wouldn't be here and neither would any of you without the special people in our lives that have made it possible, whether it's your spouse or your parents or your next door neighbor, like Mrs. Lovelady in Surreal, Oklahoma, who was just an amazing woman. And I hung out at her house all the time, or teachers. I mean, you can think of your teachers, Mrs. Cochran, Mr. Kelsey, Mrs. McPherson. They're all coming to mind, and you're thinking through them, and they believed in you. They were an adult who paid attention to you, who cared about you at a young age. And, I was just at Madison Meadows talking to an 8th grade class about government. And I told them, I said, we're very interested in how and what your parents think because they're voters. Politicians want to know how voters, what's important to them, what do they like, what do they dislike. But I said, you probably won't know this, but your parents care a lot about what you think, what the kids think. And they were like, what? No, that doesn't happen. I said, they might not show it, but they care very much about what you think. And sometimes they make decisions, voting decisions based on your feedback and what you're seeing around the world around you. And that relationship, that intergenerational relationship that we've all experienced, I think has been amazing for me. And I have so much gratitude for the people along my way in life for paying attention to me.
Yeah.
It's been a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of people either don't realize or perhaps devalue the impact that one caring adult can have on a young person, and just how much that can shape them. I see that even in my own children, right? I can tell them something, but, dad tells them stuff all the time. And another adult that they know and that they trust says the same exact thing, and it's like so profound to them. And I'm like, well, wait a second, I just said that. But that just goes to show the power of community and the way that us that are regular interacting with students, how we can just speak life into them and their future and give them that vision of like, and that hope for their future.
Absolutely. And it's a lesson to all of us right now, I think, in this day and age of, you have a lot of toxic messages, particularly on social media, and everybody's outraged on both sides.
Mhm.
And recently, I had someone say, share some concerns about what I did or didn't do, and I just said, I think we all need to just calm down. And if we can just lower the temperature ourselves, calm down, I think that will be beneficial for the next generation to see that not everything is a zero-sum game. Not everything is at the precipice of destruction. Let's just take the temperature down here a little bit. Not everything is existential. And let's talk through the problem that we might have. And we might not reach full agreement, but when you can't hear the other person because you're yelling over them, how is that going to help?
Yeah.
How's that going to help? And our actions and what we do and being a role model, whether you know it or not. I mean, kids are always watching. Even, I was listening to this one speaker, even little babies, if they've seen parents on the phone and the baby's just right there, doing what a baby does, but the baby's watching that parent on their cell phone, just scrolling or going to Instagram or checking email or whatever. Those are behaviors that these kids are picking up even earlier, of not being connected with one another.
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah.
And how we kind of just have gone on autopilot with our phones.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's a major problem. And then lecturing our kids to not be on their phones so
Right.
much when we're not modeling the behavior ourselves. So totally get that. Okay. Well, thanks for that. So you mentioned your lovely neighbor back in Oklahoma.
Oh, yes.
So let's start there in your story. So you were born and raised in rural Oklahoma.
Town of 1,000 people, youngest of 4, single wide trailer house, like you mentioned. And, these small towns, they're like large extended families, and most of us in the town, I mean, most of us were not wealthy by any stretch. So I didn't necessarily feel dirt poor, which we were, because, we all were experiencing the same. I felt like we were all experiencing the same economy, the same life. And, when you don't travel outside of your bubble, things are what they are. But Mrs. Lovelady, Donnie and Janice Lovelady.
What a
Janice,
great name, by the way.
isn't that
Yeah.
great? Janice K. Lovelady. Mrs. Lovelady. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. And she had all these flower beds, and she would sit out in the back on a swing, and I would go over, and she'd give me all these double bubble gum and Sam's Choice Coke, and it was just amazing just to sit there and talk to her about this and that, and she asked me questions and I asked her questions, and it was amazing. And I was, I don't know, 11 or 12 at the time. And we just kind of just synced up, and I'd always go to her house after school. She had cable, so we had antenna.
Fancy.
It's a big deal.
So that's a big deal. And I loved professional wrestling.
Okay.
So a big professional wrestling fan. And I would go over and watch professional wrestling with her. She'd be watching in the other room, CNN's Larry King Live or something like that. But
Yeah.
But she was such a transformational impact. And I remember when I graduated high school, each graduate got 10 seats, and she was one of my 10. And she gave me this birthday card, or not this birthday, this graduation card, and it had all of these little sayings of like, remember the wrestling, remember the bubble gum, remember all of these things that we just had connections with. I had a newspaper route, and she helped me fold newspapers every Sunday morning, because you had to assemble the newspapers and get them out. And she had to like wake up at 3 a.m. And then she said, and in the center of all of these remembers, she was like, remember me. And, that's just special. That's so special that she wanted to be remembered. And it's great that I can share a little bit of Mrs. Lovelady with all of you. And, she made a huge impact. And it kind of is, instructive and, informative for me to try to be that person to someone else if I can, paying it forward.
Yeah. Wow, I love that story. It's so powerful. Double bubble. I understand the power of double bubble. I coach my son's baseball team, and I always have a pocket full of double bubble. And when they do something good, like good hit, good play in the infield, whatever, they get a piece of double bubble. And at the end of practice, when I am going to kind of debrief and then dismiss them, I give them all a piece of double bubble because they'll sit there and listen to me. These are 8-year-old boys, so they're squirrely, but double bubble locks them in every time.
It does. I would go in every time I'd go over to her house, and I just grab a handful. Eventually, she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna have to start charging you. So each double bubble you pick, put down a quarter." And I think that was pretty expensive.
She was teaching you some economics.
She's teaching me some economics.
Those are good margins.
She was making out.
So have you found yourself with that lesson learned of how she poured into you? Have you found yourself in a situation where you intentionally pour into someone else when maybe your gut says I'm too busy, but you think about her and think, no, I'm going to sit on this bench. I'm going to have this conversation.
Yeah. And it's tough because it's tough in that I am really busy, and I wish I had more time to spend. I wish I were able to. I mean, at the time she was retired, so she could, sit with me, and she was always there after school. And I'm not at that stage in my life yet, but I remember my niece coming out to visit me, and I said, we're going to spend a full week and just travel all over the state. And we did some fun. I did a few work things here and there, but I wanted to make sure, she had a great time. We went to Sierra Vista, went to the border wall. I got her to ride with one of the sheriff's deputies, and they engaged in a high-speed pursuit. She was like, this is the best day ever.
Yeah.
It's those moments where we went to Prescott. Now, this was odd, but it was an unexpected experience, I guess, for me. But I've processed it. I was like, I gave her some money, and I said, I want you to go and buy something for yourself. It's just whatever you want, go buy it. And my next door neighbor, Rachel, she went with Kylie Joe to go buy something. And I thought, she was going to buy a pair of cowboy boots or a cowboy hat or, something Prescott, old Western. Well, she bought a switchblade. I was like, whoa,
nice.
It was a really nice switchblade. I was like, wow, that's, I didn't expect that, expect you to get one of those. It had engravings and all of those things. I was like, okay, that's,
she's prepared.
She's prepared.
That's awesome.
She's ready to go out into the sticks in Yavapai County and live off the land. So yeah. It's those kinds of moments where, making that time and putting things, but obviously I would love to have more time to spend with my nieces and nephews.
Well, that probably highly impacted her. I mean, really, for a long, long time, it'll impact her similarly to how Miss Lovelady impacted you. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I make it a point of all my nieces and nephews to, because I don't have any kids yet, but to go to their graduations. I want to make sure I go to their high school graduations and their college graduations if they end up going to college. I think that's really important to be there. And so it's making that effort, and I think you're right. I think they'll see that.
Well, especially trying to get away in May.
Oh yeah.
Towards the end of session, everything's coming to a vote and budgets are being negotiated, and it's tough. It's a commitment.
It's a commitment. But, luckily, session hasn't interfered with my plans so far, but
Yeah.
who knows? Give the legislature some time. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah. So anything about your upbringing in Oklahoma that has shaped how you approach your role in public service and even education policy?
Nothing's impossible. That's kind of what I took away. I in a small town. Did any of you grow up in a small town?
Yep.
Okay. How big?
About the same size, about 1,000 people.
Okay. Small town?
Small town.
Okay.
Yeah, probably a little bigger, but
All right.
my world was small. for
You're
sure.
you're a city slicker.
City slicker.
Greenwood, Indiana.
Keep an eye on her.
Yeah.
In these small towns, and you know this, you can do anything because there aren't enough people to do everything, if that makes sense. So, I was a custodian at the school. I had 2 newspaper routes. I worked at the convenience store as a clerk at one point. I was a newspaper reporter for our town newspaper covering City Hall. I was the DJ at the basketball games. I was one of the performers for the Miss Pirate pageant. You had all of these little vignettes and dramas and that, were in between when the contestants got up there. You can just basically, I gave public speeches. I was on the praise and worship band playing bass guitar. And if you just show interest and put yourself forward, people will let you do it. It's not like you need to wait your turn. I ran for the town board when I was 18. And I recruited the other people that we were running as well, and they were all in their 70s, and they said, you should run just in case one of us dies. So you're our alternate. I was like, okay, I will do that.
Not?
And, they got like 300 votes. I got 124 votes. 124 adults said this 18-year-old should be on the town board. Now, I would not vote for myself at that point. At this point, I would not vote for 18-year-old Matt Gress because there are, so many other experiences that I needed to have to get to this point, I think. But the long and the short is that I felt empowered to do whatever I wanted, to pursue whatever goals I wanted, regardless of, the size of my mom's bank account, or that we lived in a 2-bedroom trailer house, or this or that. I felt like I could do whatever I wanted as long as I put my mind to it. And I had a lot of positive, encouraging adults around me saying, yes, you can do that. And that transcended, my life in college, going to college, being the first in my family to attend and graduate, going on being a teacher and kind of enduring the most difficult job I've ever had as being a teacher in a high need school, and just beyond. I've never thought, oh, I can't do that because of this or that. I was the youngest budget director in the country at the time, at 29. It was amazing, that people thought, can you do the job? Yes, we're hiring you,
Right.
regardless of when was your birth date? I mean, they didn't really look at that, or they didn't look at what I really like about Arizona is it's not about your last name or where you came from. It's a forward-looking state. It's about where you can go and what your ambitions and your perseverance will take you. So, but it all started in that small town of Surreal, Oklahoma, that you could do whatever you wanted, and you could be whatever you wanted to be.
Yeah.
It sounds like, even up through now, there's been a lot of people that just have believed in you and believed in your abilities and saw the potential. And from what I'm hearing, that started with Mrs. Lovelady. And, so much of what we do, especially for our students, is all focused on mentorship. Every student gets a mentor, and we often talk about that positive adult relationship, and for many of our students, that's the only positive adult relationship they have. So I'm guessing for you, maybe with the exception of your mom, Mrs. Lovelady was that first mentor or positive adult relationship kind of outside of your family circle. And besides, proximity and availability, what do you think, looking back at it, what do you think it is that drove her to do that? Was it just simply, just the type of person she was, or was it a genuine curiosity in you? What were those characteristics maybe she had that drove her to do that, and then the impact that had on you?
I still have, I wrote an eighth grade paper in English class about someone who's important in your life. And the title of that eighth grade essay was A Firecracker of a Friend. And then I went in and talked about double bubble and all of those things. And Mrs. Lovelady was such an eccentric person. She was loud, and she, I think she once told us to get out of her yard when we were younger. Like, we were get out of my yard. And we had a goat in our house for a while, and the goat had gotten away and was eating Mrs. Lovelady's peonies, I think. So, at first I was like actually afraid of her for, very young. And then I started to like see her out there, and she was planting something, and I was like, I'm interested in planting, flowers or trees or bushes or whatever. And I'll go over and ask her what's her secret, because she's so good at it. And then it just kind of struck up that conversation of a shared interest. And I remember I bought this rose bush. It was this beautiful rose bush from Walmart. It's like $20. And she said, I can't believe you paid $20. That rose bush isn't going to last a year. And I said, okay, well, I'll bet you, I think we bet either $1 or $10. I can't remember. And sure enough, the rose bush lasted a year, and she paid up. But, there were just a lot of shared interests that, I mean, she was probably 66 or 67, and, a 12 or 13-year-old had this intergenerational dynamic. And I was always interested in the past. And she had all these stories to share about what Cyril was like in the 1950s and 60s, and, what it was like growing up. And, her last kid had graduated her youngest had graduated, I think, like in 1982. So, here I am in the late 90s. Maybe she did think of me as like her last kid, the baby of her family, and so did her kids think of me as their younger brother. So I don't know. I think there were a lot of factors. Her husband, Donnie Lovelady, was the former chief of police of the town, and he was a security guard. I eventually worked with him as a security guard at a chemical factory. Again, you can do whatever you want in these small towns. Why not? Why can't I be a security guard? But I don't know. There were just a lot of factors at play, but she really did care about me. I knew that, and enjoyed hanging out with me and just talking to me about current affairs, because I was also very interested in politics, and she just loved talking. She was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. Like, if she could have voted for FDR, she would have voted for FDR, and all throughout. And I took the Republican position, of course. And so it was a lot of banter back and forth. And I really loved that.
Yeah.
Loved that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your mom for a second. Single mom.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the hardest job in the world, being a single mother. I couldn't imagine being a single parent. How did she influence, your mindset as you started to grow up, that curiosity that was within you? How did that dynamic play out?
So my mom was a female drill instructor in the U.S. Army.
Okay.
So maybe that was one way that she kept us all in line.
Fear.
Fear. Heads will roll, she would say. Heads will roll if this isn't fixed or if this isn't cleaned up by the time I get home. But she spent her 30s and 40s and 50s working at a shock and strut factory in a nearby town, Chickasha, Oklahoma. And I remember, she would always come home. She wore black, a black T-shirt. She'd cut off the arms, so it was like a black tank top, black sweat shorts, or there would be sweatpants that she cut off, once they got worn out, and just covered in grease. And I mean, you could just, it was, I can still smell the smell. Is think about a factory and machine parts. And she was a screw machine operator in assembling the struts. I remember going to her work, and it was like, take your kid to work day. We always wanted to see where she worked. And we went in, and she was showing us around all these machines and everything. And there was this big cart, a big yellow cart full of all of these metal components. And she was like, I have to push this around. And now she's like 5'4", 5'4", 5'5", 135 pounds maybe at her max. But I mean, like, she's a very petite woman. And this is heavy. Like, she had to like get like momentum to get the cart to start budging. I mean, it was really tough. And I can't help but think she had to do all of that work all day and then come home, and all four of us are sitting there, dinner and homework, or, getting into fights with each other, or whatever that might be. And then she has to think about her bills and, all of these other aspects. I mean, it's just amazing. My takeaway from her is that just when you think you're out of juice and out of capacity, there's always more to give. And she gave far more than what anybody else, I think, could have given in that situation. But I also think her faith in God helped. We all went to church, whether we wanted to go or not. Get in the car, we're going to church. And that also instilled in us, I think, a good moral compass. And it was a place where she could relax and she could connect with God and with others who were really positive adults in our lives. And we were part of that safe network. And we had friends who also went to church with us. But she was, I mean, and I speak about it in the past tense. I mean, she's still alive. She's still with us. She had a stroke in 2013 that greatly set her back. But she was a very strong woman in her heyday, and she's still strong now, just in a different way. And I think that was, also, you wouldn't be who you are without the certain childhood experiences you go through. Yeah. The setbacks, not everything was perfect. And, it builds resilience. It builds independence and perseverance. Again, to know, like, when you feel like you're at your all, there's still more to give. You just have to persevere through and make that commitment.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, and something I talk about often. Some people will, put those hard situations of childhood into this trauma category, right? And I'm not discrediting like real trauma that people endure, but those life situations and those circumstances are what shapes us, right? We're not victims of that, right? We have to see the good in, the having to have multiple jobs when you're a teenager, or mom having to display the hustle and the grind to just survive. It would be easy to take those things and take those on as an identity and a victim, or you can use it for good to fuel your potential as you continue to grow up and go to college and accomplish and let it shape ambition, which is the positive side of it.
Absolutely.
When used the right way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I really do think that we've created this permission structure to not reach our highest potential because of some trauma along the way. And every human is capable of doing great things. I believe that.
Yeah.
And when we set up, especially students, to think, your anxiety is going to keep you back. So let's focus on your anxiety before we can get to your ability to read or write. And I think that we've gone too far to like creating these other excuses, these other pathways that distract from a kid's ability to learn and thrive and succeed. Life is hard. There are going to be bumps along the way. We've all had them. And but that's not an excuse to just stop where you are and develop and grow at some other point in your life. Time is a forward moving concept, and we have to be prepared for that. And she had a no excuses policy. Now, my siblings and we all had various different pathways, but we all moved forward, and we didn't make excuses and we had plenty. We had plenty. And I know that that's kind of harsh to say, but that's how I grew up. That was my mentality. And, I remember I was on the baseball team, and it was really hot one day. I was like, I don't want to go to baseball practice, Mom. She's like, you made a commitment. No excuses. You're going to be out there. And it was hot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad and then I wanted to quit at some point, and she was like, nope, you're going to stay through the entire season. You made a commitment to your team. You're going to honor that commitment. And I'm glad that she's stuck by her conviction there. And commitment is a fundamental lesson that kids need to learn in this. Otherwise, you're just going to be bouncing around and potentially listless, like a lot of kids are these days.
Especially with all the distractions that there are.
Oh, absolutely. Countless.
Yeah. That's one of the common mottos in my house is we start what we finish. If you don't want to play it anymore, that's fine. But you got to start what you finish, or finish what you start. Yeah, had that backwards.
Both are kind of
Both
true.
are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't finish if you don't start.
That's right. Jeez.
It's all perspective.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you graduate high school in Oklahoma.
Go to the University of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Go Sooners.
Gotcha. So you're not a Oklahoma State guy.
OS who?
Understood.
Yep.
But in college, I was in this collegiate organization called Oklahoma Intercollegiate Legislature, or OIL, which is fitting because it's oil, and Oklahoma is a big oil state. And
No coincidence, I'm sure.
No coincidence at all. And it was formed in 1969 by then Oklahoma Governor George Nye, who recently passed. And he still stayed in touch with me after all these years. I'd send him little emails, and he'd send back like things in all caps. He died in like 97 or 98. But he was still there. He was still there with it. And all these college students throughout the state got together at the state capitol, and you kind of reenacted mock government. You had the House, and you had the Senate. You had mock or moot court, and then all these executive branch groups, and they would do things. I thought, wow, this is really cool. To not only get to interact with people who are just highly energetic and motivated and civic minded, but then they had all of these bills, and you got to debate the bills and form an argument. And make your point and use rhetoric. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I eventually worked my way up to being governor of OIL.
Mm.
And but I learned a lot of lessons that I learned in OIL. I have brought with me to the Arizona legislature in terms of the relationships, the importance of relationships. It's the cartilage of a legislative institution, and how, your enemy on one bill could be your friend on another bill. So don't burn them. Don't burn the bridge. You'll find areas where you agree on, but don't make it personal. Take the issues seriously, but not take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
That was a really, I mean, and I learned a lot of lessons in leadership there, and what you can and can't do, and getting a sense of the audience, what their comfort levels are, and we ultimately, the organization was at risk of being closed down because it became a big drinking fest. All these college kids across the state get together at a hotel. We're all staying, and then we go back and forth to the Capitol every day. Of course, all these kids are just going to drink. And a lot of the student affairs vice president said, no more. We're not allowing kids. Someone's going to get hurt, and someone's going to go to the hospital. And I think one person did with alcohol poisoning. So I reached out to alumni, adults, and I was an adult at the time too, but, professionals who were later along in their career. We all got together. We put together a foundation to lean into the alumni and allow for shared governance of the students who change over every year. And, these alumni who are going to be there, who have a vested interest in the organization continuing to exist. And then changing up, what kids are doing after we're done at the state capitol, providing opportunities to go to restaurants or, go to laser tag or whatever it is. We came up with different options that they could pay for, and then we were able to get discounted. And it saved the organization. It's still alive today and well. And, but a lot of lessons there that I learned in terms of navigating, the internal politics of an organization and external factors and stakeholders that also either can be on your side, like in the terms of the foundation, or be against you in terms of probably these, student affairs vice presidents.
Yeah.
Wow. What an extremely unique opportunity that was.
All while I was in college.
Yeah, right. You still weren't really expected to be an adult, but you were practicing all the adult things that you needed to learn.
If I could go back in time, I'd go to college. I'd go back to my college years. I loved college. It was a lot of fun. Again,
Did too. Yeah.
the expectations for you, it's like, this is your time to kind of be free and explore and what you want to do with your life.
That sounds real nice right now.
Going to college?
Yeah. I'll go back too.
My meal plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after you graduated from Oklahoma, did you go straight to Syracuse for your graduate degree, or did you go into the workforce and pursue your master's later?
I went to Teach for America,
Okay.
and then taught 10th and 11th grade English in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 2 years. And I actually lived with my parents at the time. I made $30,000 a year. And I was able to get a stipend for like $600 for being a student council advisor, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a soft spot for student council. I was a student council president when I was in high school. But I did that, and it was a whirlwind. I actually did my summer training. They do a summer institute. It's like this intense boot camp for 6 weeks here in Arizona. We stayed at the Barrett Honors College campus, and we would go and teach. I taught in Agua Fria summer school, and you had to just work. And it was intense, like long days, preparing your lesson plans, going over and getting rigorous feedback from all of these teaching coaches, and then you're learning. My degree is in political science and history. I didn't go through the College of Education. So there were a lot of, if I can say this word, pedagogical components that I wasn't even aware of. I mean, having a behavior management system. Like I knew, Mrs. Tarpley would say, quiet down, or I'm just going to send you to the office. But it's far more complex than that. You need systems in place. How do you position kids? How do you greet kids? Exit tickets? All these other aspects of education. But one thing I took away from my own experience, I had a teacher, Mrs. Cochran. She would tell a joke at the beginning of every class. I thought it was just so funny. And a lot of the jokes were just corny.
Yeah.
But we would laugh, just like,
I would love that.
But we secretly loved it. And so that was my trademark. Even in Agua Fria, I would start off with a joke and did that throughout my my tenure. But anyway, it was very intense. I did that, came back and started at in the classroom by myself. And I was 3 weeks into my teaching and I wanted to quit. I was like, this is horrible. And I even had my resignation letter. I typed up my resignation letter. I was like, I can't do this. I am a terrible teacher. And I had always been straight A student, everything. And I just felt like a big failure. And the day I was going to, I told my principal, Dr. Wallace, I said, Dr. Wallace, could I talk to you after school? And I think he knew I was just, you can see it on a teacher's face when you know.
Yeah. Usually as a leader, when someone says that, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, like, uh-oh. So the day that I was going to talk to him and say, I'm done, it was 11th grade American Lit. And I took the book, or we were going to read a story from the book. I just moved up my desk, or moved up a kid's desk, sat in it, and, looking at everybody around. I like slammed my book down, turned to page 235, read. And then, we started kind of walking through it and talking about it, asking questions and all of that. And my Teacher America coach was there watching, and he had seen me teach a couple of other times over the last 3 weeks. And at the end, he was like, I just want you to know that's the best teaching I've ever seen from you. I was like, all I did was slam down the book and tell people to read and ask them questions about it. It's like perfect. Because, at the time I had like a stopwatch. I had to make sure all the time was allotted for. I was just really stressed out because, you were taught you can't waste any minute of learning. And I think I was just so stressed that I kind of missed the point that it's having a conversation about this text and how it even relates to your life and what you think of the world. And there wasn't any worksheet that I had to put together. There wasn't any ticket out the door at that point. It was just good old fashioned, let's read and talk about what this means to you. And at that point I was like, okay, I just need to make it to fall break. If I could just make it to fall break. Okay, now if I could just make it to Thanksgiving, if I could make it to, Christmas break. And then on the backside, on the second semester, I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Mm-hmm. And I also thought the breaks are more about the adults than it's about for the kids. If you're like really stressed and working hard. But it was talk about commitment. I mean, I was like, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep doing it. And of course, the second year got so much easier than the first year, and just building relationships with the kids.
Yeah,
made a huge difference. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Right.
I have to ask a question.
Yeah.
And sorry if I'm interrupting the flow of the story here, but you were in student government in high school. You studied political science in college. You were in oil. At 18, you got elected onto the town council.
I didn't get elected. Just got 124 votes.
Just 124 people.
Well, you ran.
I ran.
Sorry. Where's the jump to English teaching? How did that happen?
So when you're applying for Teach for America, you give you preference what you want. So I was like, oh, of course, social studies. I'd love to do social studies or history.
Okay, I can make the connection there.
Yeah, and I got my certification in that. I'm certified in Arizona to be a history, economics teacher,
Okay.
and
Good
plus
to know. We
English.
might need you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a shortage. I heard. And but I actually did. You have to do a mock lesson, so I did it on the 3 branches of government and the checks and balances, and I had everything just so perfect, for adults who were listening to me, and that turned out really well. People care about the U.S. Senate and equal representation at that point. But no, they put me at English, probably because political science and history, heavy reading and writing, and I could do pretty well on that.
Okay.
But I really loved it. I loved my English teacher, and it allowed me to pick out texts that are really important to our political system. Thomas Paine and Common Sense, or the Federalist Papers, or The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I mean, all of these really great pieces of work that had a huge impact on American culture.
So you were secretly teaching social studies.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the beauty of it.
I know. I love
Meet
it.
the standards, and
That's right.
it's good.
I mean, did you know going through college that you'd want to pursue teaching, or was it you got done and you're kind of?
Well, I graduated in 2010, so it was at the height of the recession.
Yeah.
And I had the Truman Scholarship. I had won this Truman Scholarship in 2009. And as part of the Truman Scholarship program, you have to put forward a public policy that you wanted. And then you had to basically, and I think this is good for people to do when they're in high school and college, and maybe even now, I guess, is you kind of have to lay out what you want your life to look like, and what college do you want to go to? What grad school do you want to go to? What job do you want to pursue? And, at that time, I was like, I would like to run for the Oklahoma legislature. This was in 2009. And I'd actually been an intern or a fellow at the Oklahoma House of Representatives in college for the Oklahoma House Education Committee. So I said, I'd like to run for the Oklahoma legislature and put forward a bill that would allow for the administrative consolidation of rural schools so that we don't have to shut down the school buildings because they're hugely important to our rural communities. But suppose you have one superintendent for 3 school districts. Do you need one superintendent for one district with 200 kids? I don't think so.
No.
Your transportation. Can you consolidate your fleet, or can you athletic equipment? Maybe we could have, wrestling in Surreal if, we were able to kind of consolidate resources to hire a wrestling coach for 3 places, something like that. So I was very much interested in, the education side of the ledger, and I'm very passionate about it. And my teachers kind of suggested I could go in and do it, and I wanted to impact education policy. And I thought, what better way to do that than being on the ground level of where policy implementation occurs? And that's a formal way of saying it, but the street level action is the most important. I can sit at my desk and press a red or green button all the time. How you actually implement it, that's the blind spot of the legislature, by the way, is that they come up with all these ideas and they have no way to ensure it's successful implementation. So then it's a feel-good thing that you've done, but have you made a difference? And being in the classroom was really eye-opening for me to understand, okay, things aren't as what they seem from, the viewpoint of the state capitol.
Really important context that you absorbed for your current reality.
Well, he almost wrote a script, budgetary acumen in the consolidation of the rural school, admin, being a legislator, being a teacher. You tied it all very nicely together with what you proposed.
Well, thank you. It has been really a focal point. Is to me a phenomenal education for every kid every day without exception. Like that is kind of how I view the world when I'm looking at public policy. And it all stemmed from great teachers I had growing up, of working on education issues in college, teaching, and at Syracuse, I had a background with public administration with an emphasis in state and local finance, and I had a little bit of education, some education policy, but it was largely tax and fiscal policy that I homed in on, because I felt like I had a lot of knowledge that I had gained from my educational experience. But I'll also say, I think it's, just as an aside, in case you're interested in my thought, I do not think you should go from undergraduate to graduate school immediately. I think you
I
need
agree.
to get some real world experience.
Yeah, I did the same. Yeah.
And you can tell the students who went from undergrad to grad in the context of classroom discussions, and you're thinking, okay, I don't know how that's going to work.
I was just having that conversation with my son, who's getting ready to finish his bachelor's degree, and he was saying he might go get an MBA. Like, well, don't do that right away. It's going to be useless to you. You can't think through business administration if you've never worked. You have to have context. You have to have something to compare it to bounce it off of in your head. So, we'll see. We'll see if he takes my advice or not. Maybe if he hears it from you.
Yeah, another adult.
Yes.
Another a trusted adult. You can be like, okay, all right, yeah, I'm going to take a break. The job market right now, it reminds me of the Great Recession. I think I read something that it's the toughest job market for graduates in like a long time because of AI and, the uncertainty in the economy. I mean, it's a tough go. But if you can get a job without, in between your undergraduate and graduate, I think it makes you appreciate grad school more, because you're like, college is not real life. It is an alternate dimension that's amazing, which is why I'd like to go back to it. But then you're like, you work really hard. I mean, that the teaching stint was just, I mean, you every minute of your life, either you're grading or you're instructing or you're planning or you're talking to parents or you're in PLCs. I mean, it's just like grinding. So then I got to grad school and was like, oh, and it was intense as well, but not as intense as teaching. So it was like on vacation.
An expensive vacation.
That's right. That's right.
So what brought you to Arizona?
So I applied for jobs in Oklahoma, where my mom lives, and Arizona, where my dad lives, and got my first job out of grad school here in Arizona. I applied and interviewed for two jobs at two places: the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, which is the nonpartisan budget office for the legislature, and the Governor's Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting, OSPB, which is the executive budget office. And I flew out of Syracuse in March in a blizzard.
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible. I arrived here, and you know what March is like in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's the best.
it's the best. I mean, the weather was perfect. We had dinner or had lunch at Chelsea's Kitchen out on the patio. And for the interview, they took us to lunch to Friday's Front Row at the time. Friday's Front Row at Chase Field, and the ceiling was open up. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is an amazing place, of course. And Richard Stabniak, another huge mentor of mine, who's the director of JLBC still, he offered me the job on the spot. And it was funny because, I was studying Medicaid expansion. This was, when the Affordable Care Act was getting implemented and had a number of different implications, including, if you remember, Governor Brewer brought forward a proposal to do Medicaid expansion. This was a huge deal because you had non-expansion states and expansion states. And it was like she crossed over the aisle to get Republicans and Democrats to support it. So I thought, I mentioned, I had studied Medicaid expansion, and I didn't fully realize when I went and interviewed that March of 2013 was when she was doing Medicaid expansion. It was this huge deal. And I remember Richard, one of the interview questions is, okay, I'm a legislator, brief me on a public policy issue like that I don't know much about. And I picked Medicaid expansion, unknowing they were taking it up and far more complicated than I knew at the time. He was like, you did well. And
Yeah. You hit a grand slam on that topic.
I tried. In hindsight, I did my best to scratch the surface. I had no idea of some of the issues that they were dealing with, but I tried to hold my own, offered me the job, and it was the salary that I wanted. And I came out but I moved out here July 3rd. It was like, oh. And I'd had a sense of what it was going to be like from when I did my Teach for America training, but nothing prepares you quite like.
No.
Much different feel than March.
Yeah. Yeah. But I worked there and I loved working. I learned so much about the budget. That's the most important document that you could know about is your financial outlook. And I had Department of Health Services, Attorney General, Higher Ed, some part of K-12, IT. They had this big IT project that took many years to get done and was kind of not good at the end. A little subpar. But anyway, loved that. And then after the legislature, I went to work at the Corporation Commission as a policy advisor for Andy Tobin, who was previously the Speaker of the House, where I had met him in my JLBC role and knew nothing about utility policy. Again, it's kind of that nothing is impossible. Yeah. Just because usually policy advisors are attorneys. I'm not an attorney.
Just put yourself forward, right?
Put yourself forward and work your butt off.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that was tough. I mean, Commissioner Tobin, Andy Tobin, his mind went like a million miles a minute, and you're the staffer for him. And like, okay, my job is to make sure what his ideas look like come to pass. And so there was just a lot of velocity with his office, and again, learned a whole lot of. There was one lesson he had. It was a 5-member panel. The Corporation Commission is, and so if you have a 3-2 vote, any one of the three are the swing votes. And I said, you seem to be the swing vote, Andy. The power is all in your hands. You have so much influence and power at the commission. He said, you're the swing vote until you're not. And I thought that was it's a pretty good lesson. Don't overplay your hand.
Yeah.
Just know that this is context specific. And sometimes you're going to be in the majority and sometimes you're not.
Good lesson.
Good lesson.
Yeah. So after your time at the Corporation Commission, you made your way back into the budget office, right?
Correct.
Under Governor Doug Ducey.
Correct.
Where you were leading that organization as the director, right?
That's right. So I remember the 2 budget offices I applied for. I got hired at one to work on staff, and I got hired as the other to lead it. So I went from being an applicant to the office as an entry-level budget analyst, and they wanted to hire me, by the way, but I wanted a higher salary than they were willing to pay, which we overhauled that when I was director to be competitive,
right,
with other state offices. But yeah, I ended up getting appointed in 2017 to be the budget director, and that was a lot of fun, a lot of work.
Yeah.
I remember I worked, and I don't think I needed to have done this, but I felt like I had something to prove my first year, because that's your first budget, and you gotta. I was very nervous about it. Like, this is maybe this is a little bit too far beyond. Nothing is impossible, but maybe this is maybe a little impossible. And someone asked me, well, remember the last time that you failed at something big? Tell me what that was. And I was like, well, I really haven't failed at anything hugely consequential. I was able to figure it out. I mean, everybody has failures, no doubt about it. But, when everything's on the line, I just haven't had that kind of failure that, just was devastating and ruined me, I haven't had that experience yet. Hopefully that won't happen anytime soon. But I got in there. I worked on Christmas Day. I actually worked on Christmas Day. I shouldn't have. In hindsight, nothing is as important as,
Right.
working Christmas Day. Nothing is that important. But it was so much fun, getting to manage a staff of about 20 people, and so many smart people. They all had advanced degrees, and we just dug into the budget and put together some amazing packages for the legislature. Went through Red for Ed and the strike.
Yeah.
Wrote the 20 by 2020 plan. We went through COVID. I mean, we, paid off our state buildings. We what did we do? We sold them off.
Yeah.
During the Great Recession in order to get cash, and then we bought them back, and our credit ratings went up. We did these big credit rating pitches every year.
And just huge growth in the rainy day fund, right?
Rainy day fund. Oh yeah. The rainy day fund we put in $1 billion to the rainy day fund. It had like $400 million. Put in $1 billion over a 2-year period. Paid off lots of debt at a higher rate than ever before. I mean, there were a lot of good things. And we were able to cut taxes. We put in the lowest flat tax in the country, 2.5%.
Yeah.
With triggers built into it. So I think Governor Ducey did a lot. And what I liked about his leadership style is that he was not a micromanager. Now, he was very clear on his expectations, very clear on those. But his view was, I've hired the skill and the talent to get what I want done, so go do it. Bring me the solutions, the solution set. If there's a problem, bring me options here, and I'll make the ultimate decision. But I want you to, I delegate. He delegates very well.
Yeah. What's the one thing you're most proud of in your time during the Ducey administration?
In terms of policy wins? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say we increased spending on K-12 education at a faster rate than at any other time in Arizona history. It was under our watch that the per pupil spending, and it was always a major focal point of some. It used to be, we're still under 2007 levels when you look at the per pupil spending when adjusted for inflation. We surpassed that. And people have stopped using that point because we've moved on. We were able to solve that. So I would say the historic investments that we made in education, I think, were really important. Now, looking back on it, it was important, and I don't believe we'll ever check the box on investing in K-12 education. But I really think that it has invited a larger conversation about what we're getting for our investment. And right now, the results are proficiency scores in English and reading and math. They're not good. And so we've put the money in. The scores went the opposite way than how much money we've put in. And I think policymakers now have to confront what other changes do we need to be making besides investing more money to get the outcomes we want for kids.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the Governor Ducey termed out, and everybody kind of transitioned out of the governor's office and into new roles. And at that point, you decided, you know what, I'm going to run for the legislature. What was your motivation behind that? I mean, your story could very well explain that, just given your general interest. But to stay here in Arizona and be a policymaker here, what was the primary driver there?
I don't like to walk past problems. So anytime I can have an opportunity to change something for the better, I'll do it. And politics is a lot about timing and luck. And I've had a passion in public service for a long time. I happened to be drawn into a district after redistricting that had 2 open house seats. So I thought, my talent and time and treasure have kind of intersected to make this possible, and I thought that I could do a good job and had some good ideas to offer. So I jumped in.
Yeah. Good. We're glad you did.
It was brutal. It was a 6-way primary up
Yeah,
front.
I remember.
And
It was crowded.
It was crowded, and I was not the pick of some people that were running as a slate together, incumbents, but I ultimately, knocked thousands of doors, raised a lot of money to get my message out. And I think it was a message that Republican primary voters wanted and that ultimately the district wanted. I was the only Republican to win this in the general election. It was 2 Democrats and 1 Republican in the final results.
Yeah.
But my margins have grown ever since. So I think, getting rehired is a big deal for your second reelect. And so I'm hoping they'll rehire me again for a 3rd term.
Yeah. Excellent. So you're steeped in education policy, which is one of your passions. As you know, we're kind of very missionally focused on students who don't really fit the traditional mold. A lot of them may have dropped out of school or have just these insurmountable life circumstances that they deal with. So the way that we classify that here in the state of Arizona is alternative education. From your view, what do you see the future of alternative education and the impact and need for dropout recovery programs like we offer?
Well, there definitely has to be putting people in front of, a credit recovery program, sit in front of a screen and, guess the answer until you get the right one in order for you to get your credit. I mean, I've seen some ridiculous credit recovery programs where, they're 80 credits short before graduation, and, in a day or two, they've caught up. They've gotten all their credits up. I mean, I'm just like, wow, that's something. I think that was in Tucson Unified School District. There has to be, what I really appreciate about Elevate is there is this human component to it. I mean, there is a human here that needs help. And we have a lot of unengaged, disconnected youth. We have a chronic absenteeism problem. 29% of Arizona students in K-8 missed 18 or more days of school. 34% of students in 9 through 12. That is devastating because when they're not in school, they're not learning. And there are a lot of other life issues that I suspect many of them are going through, that they need positive, encouraging adults to be that connection, to be that Mrs. Lovelady or the Mrs. Cochran or what have you, to help bring them back, to know that there is hope and something at the end of the tunnel for them and purpose and meaning. And I think that has to be a component of the alternative schooling model.
Yeah.
Is that human component to reach out to them and develop meaningful relationships that, I mean, quite frankly, aren't unusual. I mean, kids need relationships at school. They build relationships with their teachers. It just so happens that either they didn't get off to the right foot at a school, that the school wasn't meeting their needs in some form or fashion, or there was some other external trauma that happened that just didn't make that school a suitable place. Whatever the reason may be, you still have to connect with these people as people. And that's an important part of the system, not just sitting you in front of a screen and having you guess the right answer as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our approach, mastery of the concepts that they're learning is critical. They can't move on, right? You're just compounding the issue if you're pushing them through. Like kind of what was happening right after COVID of like this automatic promotion, regardless of proficiency. That, if they were in the 8th grade, they were automatically going to the 9th grade. That's a really dangerous game that was being played. Maybe it still is. I don't know. But content mastery has to be at the center of that. And like Chris mentioned earlier, we believe that, the secret sauce to the success of our programs, but also to address this chronic absentee issue, is it has to be mentoring. People who are intentionally cultivating the relationships, because it's that human connection that we all need. We were created for that connection, and to be part of a community, to have shared purpose and belonging and all those things that are so vital to our soul. And a lot of programs out there, they don't make that investment. They'll argue they don't have it in their budget, but it has to be prioritized if we're going to solve this problem as a state. That that mentoring layer, or whatever they want to call it, has to be there. One of the things that Chris says often, and I'm going to steal it from him, is, students aren't showing up to do algebra. They're showing up for that mentor relationship, and doing algebra is a byproduct of that. Because they don't want to let that person down. It's a natural thing. And then just being willing and constantly talking to the staff about constant pursuit. Or you could have super great connection and conversations for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden this kid's gone. Not answering their phone, not responding to texts. It just has to be constant. And to the point of, like, you're going to ghost me for a few days, I'm going to show up at your front door. And they need to know that's going to happen. Because if you show up at the front door and mom or grandma answers and they're not quite sure where you've been, that's not going to happen again. Right?
And I would add too, multiple connections if possible, right? The idea of it not just hinging on that one relationship with a mentor, but the other adults, the college and career counselor, the wraparound services that we can offer. Much like your story, the more connections you built, the more relationships you built with all the adults, the more successful you are actually able to be in life. It exponentially multiplies. And with society changing, where they're not really getting a lot of that adult connection, maybe as much at home as they were 50 years ago, we just have to pile it on, even higher levels, pile it on from as many people as possible.
Yeah. And I think one layer deeper, the mentoring and the constant pursuit and the multiple different adults caring for these students. And you kind of mentioned it, that, not just our students that are, in our alternative high schools, any student, they're going through some sort of life event. And any of us, whenever we're going through some life event, whether, it's they're caring for their older grandmother or their own child, or they have to work, or this, when things get tough, and we all do it, you shed what you're least connected to, and you move away from that. And a lot of times it's school. School's what these kids are least connected to. So when life gets hard, that's the first thing to go. They start ghosting their mentor or their teacher. They stop doing their assignments. All of a sudden they're absent for 10 days and they get dropped. But if we can make that positive adult relationship, and their mentors can make strides in their lives and pour into them, hopefully school's not the first thing they shed. Hopefully it's one of the last things they shed, because they're so connected, and they're realizing that positive adult relationship is so effective, and they're seeing the success in the classroom. They are having success in that algebra class that they just, through osmosis, they're learning it. Then things just go so much better, because we've made the effort to connect with them. It's the thing they're most connected to. Therefore, when life gets tough, they're still showing up.
Yeah, and they run to it.
Yeah.
Which you can kind of imagine running to the adults in your life that you trust and are connected with. We all did that as kids. And a lot of times it was the teachers. You're like, I'm going to go to school because I had a rough night. And now it's the opposite. I had a rough night. I'm not going to school.
Yeah.
We've seen that in another program that I helped start for our young adults who've aged out of foster care. Um, and I mean, talk about individuals who've experienced extraordinary trauma. So when they turn 18, we pair them not just with a success coach who's checking in with them every week. How are you doing on your plan of housing, transportation, education, career, self-agency? All the things that we've experienced in growing up and leaving the nest. We had our parents and loved ones working with us, having that success coach, but we also have a mentorship component. It is so vital to just know that you have these caring adults in your corner, rooting for you, cheering you on. And it's working, because the outcomes for these young adults aging out of foster care were terrible. High rates of incarceration, of homelessness, of drug addiction, you name it. I mean, it was just bad. And now with the structure in place of these adults supporting the young people, it's making a huge difference. It's making a positive change. It's not going to erase trauma. It never does. Trauma stays with you forever. But I think it does help these young adults learn how to deal with it in a productive way that can still allow them to succeed.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about, and this really came from someone asking me the question, what do you want your students to feel when they walk into your schools? And it's that they're loved, that there's hope for their future, and that they have an incredible amount of unrealized potential within them. And if you really think about it, those three things are really basic needs of human beings. And I think if any program, any school really wants to boil it down, how do you accomplish that at every school? And it may look a little nuanced or different, but how do you create a structure where students are loved, cared for, and they have hope, and that they can reach their potential? You said kind of early on that, and maybe it was before we started recording, but something along the lines of somehow along the way, education became more about the adults than the students. And, we found that if we can keep that focus of love, hope, potential, that really takes the view off of what's easy for the adults and more on what's important for the students. I know it's hard to capture love, hope, and potential in a policy, but there's definitely something there from a best practices standpoint, I think.
Well, I mean, to me, it's a culture.
Yeah.
And the leadership of a school helps foster that culture, whether it's around discipline or the three tenets that you just mentioned. What we say, think, and do, and that kind of emerges from professional development or your teacher evaluations, just the presence in the building, it really does make the difference. And the key is, how do you set up administrators for success to foster that culture? Certainly teacher prep programs, we can influence that about what we're teaching in our teacher prep programs. But I also think how we train administrators makes a great deal. And we got to connect those administrators with high-performing, positive, vibrant cultures. And what's the secret sauce there that you can bring to your own campus?
Yeah.
So in terms of a public policy standpoint, I think management matters. And what can we do to send the right incentives or investments to ensure that the staff who are on the ground level are getting the support that they need to be successful and to go in the right direction? That is that student-centered, student-oriented approach to education.
So you're the chair of the House Education Committee. If you were able to just wave the magic wand and make one big change to education,
getting ready.
What would that be?
I would wave the wand to make all of the bad schools good schools. So that and do it in a real way, not move the cut scores.
Just change their letter grade.
Just change the letter grade. They would actually be real A's as we know them. No grade inflation here. I mean, I want kids to do their best. I want 100% proficiency in reading and writing and math. That's what I would wave my magic wand. Now, what policy levers would I push? I mean, you have 120,000 staff, 60,000 teachers in Arizona in our district and charter systems. So it is steering a big cruise ship in a certain way. I don't want to say the Titanic because we are not sinking. We are not sinking. But it is a massive undertaking. And the state has somewhat limited levers to pull. And then you have to wait. And that's the most agonizing part, is that in education, when you start out with a policy, you can't just switch mid-course because you have to see it play out. There are limited circumstances where like, wow, that was a mistake. Let's turn, reverse course. But when you're talking about these larger systemic changes, it takes time to see whether they work or not. Fortunately, we have other states that are doing some amazing, exciting things, like in Texas and Florida, in Indiana and Wyoming. I think the Dakotas, where they are changing the paradigm of what we expect a K-12 system to produce. Not necessarily lowering the bar. I've had some people say, our kids suck on these tests. Why don't we just get rid of them? Are they even relevant anymore? And I don't think necessarily you get rid of tests because you're doing poorly on them. I think it's a really important metric to say, are we hitting the mark or not? Parents, policymakers, and kids themselves need to know. They really do. There needs to be a way to figure out whether kids are thriving. But my hope is, looking at some of these reforms that other states are doing, can we import the good stuff into Arizona? And I see, like, for instance, Mississippi is doing amazing work around third grade literacy, one of the most key determinants of a student's academic success.
Yeah.
Amazing work. What are they doing there that we can bring to Arizona? Because right now, only 36% of our third graders are proficient in reading, and yet we retain only 1%. So most kids are going into fourth grade not on grade level, and it only compounds year after year. And that by the time they arrive at your school, some of these students, they are way behind in their reading aptitude. That's what I'm hopeful of, is how can we take some of these promising best practices that are 21st century thinking, kind of moving past the old ways of education, still holds people accountable, still provides the support schools need, but ultimately is setting up kids today for success.
So with those innovative ways of doing that and really pushing kids forward, are we measuring that you kind of mentioned that measuring stick of and we kind of joked about the A through F rating that's out there. Are we measuring those things appropriately? And what should we or could we change that we're measuring appropriately so it could really tell the right story, but between are we reaching proficiency? Are we doing the right things for kids? But are we also holding our schools accountable?
Well, the answer to that right now, no. Our accountability system is terrible. We made some changes after COVID. I don't know why. Maybe it's because a lot of the schools became D's and F's. Now I don't even know if we have an F school in the state.
But there was a magic wand.
There was a magic wand, I guess. And yet
somebody had it.
And yet those A, B, and C schools, they have kids, they have proficiency rates in the single digits. Now, how is that an A? How is that a B, C school? How is that not an F school? There are some major problems right now. And, it's hard for me to say, okay, let's, go on the edges of this accountability system. We're not measuring and honoring proficiency. growth is important. I get that. But when you go from a growth rate of 8%, a proficiency rate of 8% to 16%, it's really big growth. Congratulations. But the 84% of your students,
Yep.
they're not proficient at all. Why should we be celebrating you with our accountability system? To me, it suggests that state intervention is warranted, and we need to get you resources, whether it's changing the management or what have you. We got to do something. The state just cannot allow these schools to continue failing. If you had a charter that performed like that, they'd get their charter pulled. And we did see a charter get pulled, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons. But we can't have low-performing institutions continuing to operate in Arizona without any intervention, and then having their performance masked over by a ridiculous accountability system that holds nobody accountable. Everybody's a winner. That's the mentality that makes a society weak, when everybody's a winner. No one's a loser, apparently. No one loses in any of our...
participation trophies.
So that's a big problem, and my plan is to have a legislative appointed commission to study and come forward with some changes in terms of our accountability system, but not just having an accountability to beat someone over the head with an F rating or a D rating, but also having interventions that are funded, that are paired to get these schools back on the right track. And we're going to be doing a number of other things, but I'm really worried about how the Board of Education has handled our accountability system right now. I just think that the kids deserve so much better.
Yeah, that'll be, I'm sure it'll be an interesting session, as always.
We want the conversation. I'm
sure that'll be a good one. Yeah.
I mean, just through conversation, I mean, that in itself moves the needle. How far, that's to be determined, but if it's being talked about.
And it'll, for Indiana, for instance, I think it took 8 to 10 years to kind of go through the overall. And I mean, it's a big undertaking, to be sure. I mean, we're talking about the tool that measures what our future looks like. Should be very careful with that measurement. But we need to start the conversation. And I hope that we can get the legislative commission enacted so that we can bring in experts from states and from schools there in Arizona that have been very successful and figure out what they're doing and how can we have that reflected in our measurement tool. Because what gets measured gets done. And I just don't think we're measuring the appropriate things right now. And as a result, we're sending incentives to schools that are contrary to the goals of the state.
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. You got your work cut out for you.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
I know, but I know you love getting in there and getting your hands dirty to figure it out, to drive improvement for the Arizonans that you represent. So it's much appreciated. Yeah. Well, Representative Gress, I know your time is valuable. But hearing your story is inspirational, and the grit and the resilience that you've demonstrated through, your early life, all the way up to this point of, putting in the work and finding those opportunities. I love kind of the illustration of your talent, time, and treasure kind of all meeting at that one point of the perfect timing to take advantage of what's already been an incredible career. So for our students listening, that's what I hope they take away from this, that it's showing up, putting in the work, looking for those open doors to walk through, and building those essential relationships through your life that can help build you up. So we're thankful for you. We're thankful to have you down at the Capitol doing fighting the good fight each and every day, and appreciate your service and your time.
Well, come by and see us. We'll be there January through ? Hopefully sooner rather than later. But
Yeah.
it's a pleasure to represent the people of the 4th Legislative District and the people of Arizona. And I look forward to helping do good things, do more good things for the state, because this is such an amazing state and we have amazing people. And I think they need their leaders to rise to meet their high expectations they have for us.
Yeah.
And in turn, I think that we can raise the bar for kids, families, Arizonans, and do good things.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.